Next item, motion to deem the December 10th, 2013 vote regarding long-term facilities planning consultant null and void. At our last meeting, a motion and an amended motion were considered by the school committee regarding the hiring of a long-term facilities planning consultant to assess our district facilities. While I believe that the amended motion was voted on and approved unanimously as an amendment by substitution and not as a motion by strikeout and insert, a technical procedural issue had been raised by one of our members. As chair, in order to ensure that there is no confusion when we finally hire the consultant as to the scope of its work, it is necessary that we revote the motions and hopefully reach final consensus on the scope of work to be performed by this consultant. Also, technically, if the amendment by substitution is voted on and approved as part of that motion, we stated but failed to vote at the last meeting that the motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the long-term facilities planning committee be tabled as part of the amended motion. Therefore, part of the restated amendment by substitution will include a motion to table the recommendations. There will be no vote to approve or accept the consolidation recommendation at this meeting. In order to revote these matters, it is first necessary that we invalidate the vote which took place on December 10th at the meeting, which is identified as motion 2013-270. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Assuming that the previous vote is invalidated, I recognize Ms. Backus to re-present the motion 2013-270 as you presented at the December 10th meeting. Ms. Backus.
Just first, I want you to be aware that this process has given us all a lot to think about. The motion was a motion to amend, and I have it on tape because there were a number of people that taped what happened. It was a motion to amend. It was not a motion to substitute, first of all. And I can bring the tape forward if necessary, both of them. Tonight we do revote this issue, and we move on with getting our school district back on track, I hope. And so I move the following resolution, which the words may be a little bit different, but it's basically the same. To reject the plan provided by the Long-Term Facilities and Planning Committee, to initiate a request for proposal for a company to complete a district-wide evaluation that includes but is not limited to the infrastructure, buildings, fields, etc., school layouts and capacities, equipment and materials to include technology, staffing to include teachers, support, maintenance, etc., administration. No stone or area should be left unturned. The consultant will meet with representatives from a cross-section of our entire school district community, and whoever they deem helpful to the process, they will develop and present to the school committee 2 or 3 plans or proposals with regard to long-term planning for the next 5 to 20 years in no more than 5-year increments to bring the Warwick School District into the 21st century for the good of our stakeholders, the district, and the entire Warwick community. Remember, folks, we need to do this right the first time because life ain't a dress rehearsal. Thank you. And I made a copy for a secretary.
Would you happen to have a copy for the rest of us? Because I was trying to follow and you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? In one of your requests. Oh, sorry.
So we need a second one.
Ms. Backus, I'll second your motion and we will now entertain discussion. Ms. Ahern.
Thank you. My question is regarding, you said that there would be nothing that would happen within the first 5 years? Is that what, I don't have that in front of me and I didn't have it before, so I don't understand.
I'm sorry. That is, that it will, The company will develop and present to the school committee 2 or 3 proposals, if you remember last time.
Yes.
All right, 2 or 3 proposals with regard to long-term planning for the next 5 to 20 years in no more than 5-year increments. So that means that they will present a plan, the first 5 years, this is what they envision will happen. Then within the next 10, now they might say we want to do this at 7. It's just a little, but it's capable, and of course, the further out you get, the more of it becomes a vision or a wish list.
If I could just interject on a point of order with regard to this motion. The motions as posted pertain to long-term facilities planning committee. The issue that was in debate was whether or not Ms. Bacchus's motion was properly included within the scope of the amendment or not. And an amendment by substitution is a motion to substitute, so there is a bit, excuse me. But the point of my point is that to now go from Ms. Bacchus's original motion was to table the long-term facility planning committee recommendation. To now move to reject it, given due process issues and everything else, and given the open meetings law, we did not put the consolidation recommendation back on the agenda. And that is a substantive sea change with respect to what the original motions were that were prompted to be put back on this agenda. So I have concerns about acting legally. We don't even have a court reporter here, which we had throughout that process. So I'm very concerned about having a motion to reject the recommendation now, since it has not been put on the agenda. Tabling is a different story, but
Modification, we could certainly change the language to table from reject. No,
and that would be the proper subject of a motion to amend by insertion of a strike through.
And procedurally, Ms. Healy, does that next one, or do we deal with that all the way at the end, or do we go step by step and add each item, because that's what we got inked out last time?
That depends on the practice that you desire with respect to the motion or the amended motion that you made. The main motion has been made and has been seconded. To the extent that there are amendments to Ms. Bacchus' motions, specifically, we should take those first. If you intend then to move to amend by substitution and substitute your motion for Ms. Bacchus' motion, then we would take her amendments, we would look at her motion as amended, we would compare it to your motion, and then call for a vote on whether we're going forward with the substitute, whether the substitute motion can be substituted for the main motion. Once you have a vote on that, you then vote on whichever. It's complicated. But if you want to follow the Robert's Rules of Order, that's what it takes. It may very well be that you just want to postpone this to the next meeting. So the motion itself is lengthy, but that's the procedure that has to be followed if you want to follow Robert's Rules of Order, which your policy requires.
Which is exactly why we're readdressing this issue, because it was procedural. Agreed?
But we're still not, I've got somebody here, I've got it on tape, and I'm being told that there was a motion to substitute on the floor. There was never a motion to substitute the
No one
motion.
said there was a motion to substitute on the floor.
And
We tabled the initial vote. We had a
No, I'm
combination.
talking about in December, not now.
I'm talking about December. Tabled the vote initially, and we went with it. We took your motions first. The motion was amended. You amended my amendment to your motion. And we voted on those, if you recall.
We've had one vote.
Correct.
Rosemary herself said you have to take the amended motion, you have to take the motion to amend first, and she was absolutely right. Procedurally, we had to vote on your motion to amend first before we could vote on the motion as amended.
Correct.
Pages 160 and 161 of Robert's Rules of Order recognize amendment by substitution. The reason that we agreed to put this back on the motion is because technically it was not presented as a motion by substitution. Similarly, it wasn't presented as a motion to insert or strike, which is the only other kind of amendment that's recognized by Robert's Rules of Order. So the vote at best was ambiguous. So what I'm advising you to do is follow Robert's Rules of Order to the letter, and to the letter of Robert's Rules of Order, the main motion can be amended first by motions to insert and strike through. After you're done with your motions to insert and strike through, if anyone chooses to move to amend by substitution, then they may do so. Then it's up to the committee to decide which of the two motions will be going forward to be voted on by a vote on whether the substitution is accepted or the main motion is accepted, and then we will vote on whichever motion remains. That's what Robert's Rules of Order calls for.
Can I have an opportunity to read what the motion is
Yes.
again, please? I don't know, if maybe, 2-minute recess so we can all read it.
And these motions, as they're presented, are dealing directly with how we're going to proceed with respect to an RFP going out to a consultant. That is what these are dealing with. These are not dealing with the vote to consolidate was tabled. That is off the table. We are not discussing consolidation or any of those things. What we are discussing and we are trying to get together and organize is to put together an RFP, to get it out so we have vendors come back to us and tell us exactly what it is that the vocal group that was here is demanding. That is what we are discussing. That is what the motions, Ms. Backus's motion and my motion were similar in that there were a few words that were stricken and replaced. It was a procedural error in that the original motion wasn't thoroughly voted, it wasn't voted on as amended, and the amendment to the amendment was not voted, so we did not procedurally. That is what we're doing here. So we're clear. We're not talking about consolidation in any way, shape, form, or fashion. We're looking at going out to a consultant to tell the school department and the school committee and the administration and the citizens of the city of Warwick what they think we should do. That's what we're talking about.
I mean, basically this says, we're looking to a consultant to develop 2 or 3 plans to look at the school district throughout the city and make recommendations for our future, for our long-term planning with regard to consolidation and planning from the next, from now until, from whenever it's complete, for the next 20 years. Now, the most physical parts of the action are going to be in the first 10, obviously. But it will look at the entire district, not just consolidation either. And not just looking at, not just talking to a few people, but talking to the stakeholders and city officials and consumers and consultants and teachers and administration and everybody else, and developing a plan to do this right.
The only concern I have here, Karen, and I completely agree we need to do our due diligence, I mean, I'm not denying that, is that when you say in this motion, no stone or area should be left unturned, I don't think anybody doing any sort of evaluation in any capacity or with any experience is necessarily going to leave no stone unturned. I mean,
I don't
that's
think they
just
are.
human nature, Karen, so that's my concern is the expectation here, and I don't want us to get too far away from what we're trying to accomplish by expecting like, just too much. When we know that certain things are going to, that are going to necessitate certain factors in this district. So that is my thought on this.
We have a 5-minute discussion.
My suggestion, Ms. Backus, would be that the motion remain relatively generic, and the RFP, which we would work with Mr. Ferrucci and administration in formulating, that we do go out to an outside agency to look at how we move this district forward in the next, and generically pass the motion in that manner, and specifically with the RFP, lay out exactly what it is that we're looking to have done.
And
Do you agree?
Well, I think the parameters are here, and I think that we can tweak the language, but the parameters are in the motion. And I think that we need to look at the entirety and to involve the entirety of the city. This is our city.
I understand.
We have to do what's best for our city, for our people, for our stakeholders.
Yes.
And
Ms. Ahern?
We all want the same, Karen. I don't think that you want anything different than we want. I said before that I'm willing to, go to lengths of legal recourse with the city to get funding that I believe that needs to come into this district. I don't necessarily feel that if a company came forward to us and said, we don't believe you should consolidate, that the majority on this board would consolidate. So I do not think that in any way, shape, or form that you have any more concern over our students than the rest of us do. My concern is in the wording of this and the way it, for some reason, I feel like there is such an expectation as to what needs to be done that if we veer from any of this based on a recommendation, or say it was somebody come in and they came in and they had a phase roll up and they said first phase should be X, Y, and Z because we kind of did an overview with all of these things hit, but not necessarily targeted to the level that was maybe different committee members' expectations that things wouldn't move forward. Not to say, that's my concern. I'm reading though.
We're trying to clear it up to everybody's satisfaction.
Discussing a few words.
The part that I see in it, Karen, that you can clarify, because we can't have gray areas in it. I mean, can you imagine someone coming to us later and saying, what stone did you mean in definition? I mean, I'm just saying. So, school. Really?
Look, sometimes I go a little off course, so.
So take the stones out.
So what's next?
This part right here, educators, students, administrators, providers, that's not clear, it's gotta be more defined. Elected officials, we can't have any elected officials on
My colleague is saying that she has some concerns about, and they're in parentheses, educators, students, administrators, providers. When I say providers, I mean people who consult to who have, provide service to the school system, like specialists. We have specialists that come in and help our kids with special ed and things like that. Sometimes we contract a service. That's what I'm talking about, providers, if there's any issues. There may not be any issues. But that's what I mean by providers. Elected officials, we're all stakeholders. We all want to see the best, as Jennifer said, for our city and for our kids and for their education. And whomever is being helpful to the process that's for our consultant to determine that. That's, if they say, well, we need to call in, the governor to ask him about something. I mean, he may be, it may be somebody that we don't think of, but they are. So it's just giving them that freedom. Whoever they be may be helpful to the process of developing the 2 or 3 plans.
Okay, and that's where I'm just making sure that if they do call the governor and the governor says, I can't meet with you for 2 months, then it's not going to be an issue if they can't meet with the governor.
Well, then the governor will send his staff. Come on.
I'm sorry.
The fact is that if the person says I'm not available, somebody, they may want to speak to a certain teacher, and the teacher's not available, then they're going to have to move on, but they made the attempt.
I'm okay with making
I'm not saying you have to speak to that. I'm not naming anyone.
Ms. Backus, I would suggest that perhaps you and Ms. Ahern could be part of the subcommittee that would develop the RFP with all of these concerns and all of these needs and wants that are deemed necessary
I would be happy.
for going out for the RFP. My suggestion then would be that the motions 12 and 13 that both you and I have put on the table be withdrawn, and the new motion be that we come back to this committee and to the public with an RFP to go out for a long-term consulting with those items that the school committee and have put together that deemed necessary and warranted. To put that in a lengthy motion, the motion itself should be that we go out to a consulting firm and with an RFP approved by this body.
Exactly.
You go with that?
That will be,
That's exactly what it is. And that's what both motions. Both motions
and
dealt
it
with
will
long-term.
look at, but the thing is.
The RFP will be exactly what you put, correct.
And we will write the RFP.
You will write this, basically it's a scope of work issue. So you will write the RFP that describes the scope of work. If you two do it as a subcommittee, then you bring it back to the school committee for a further vote when you're done. And that way, because you have that gives you 2 more opportunities to vote on this thing to your satisfaction. One, on voting on the request for proposal, which will be the scope of work. 2, when the bids come in and you decide who you want to do the work. And that's when you're going to have interaction with the different companies that come to bid, and that you can then, it's your motion, it's your project, you can, as long as it's within the scope of the bid, you can steer them in any direction you want to steer them. So it would just be neater, cleaner, and more manageable. That way you have written documents in front of you, you know what they say, the school committee will, each member will all have copies. If you want to move and strike and insert, it's not going to be a complex process. And I think everybody will then understand what it is you do. That procedurally.
Well, we will, Ms. Ahern and I will chair that subcommittee, and we will choose the people who we want on the committee, to include some people from the city and people from the school system.
May I just also add that that will be a school committee subcommittee, so you'll have to follow the open meetings law.
Absolutely.
And you'll have to do postings, and you will have to tell me who the chair of the committee is, so that I can get you enrolled with the Secretary of State as a subcommittee of the school committee. Nothing's easy.
Can I nominate Karen for the chair?
She nominates Karen to be the chair. Actually, technically, that's supposed to happen at the subcommittee. But I will accept that as a formal suggestion that Ms. Fox owns this topic.
I'm happy to open this. Aye.
So,
At this time, are you,
So at this time, we withdraw the, which is, it's 9:30. At this time, folks, you know, I don't want to see this mess up. All right, any more than already has been. So at this time, I'm going to withdraw the formal motion that I just put out in the motion to amend. The new motion is to go forward, to table the plan provided by the Long-Term Facilities and Planning Committee. For the school committee to develop a subcommittee which will comprise myself and Ms. Ahern. Should we say that?
say the school committee create a subcommittee.
For the school committee to create a subcommittee to develop an RFP for a consultant to be hired through the bidding process.
The scope to be determined.
The scope to be determined by the committee, subcommittee,
The scope to be recommended
by the subcommittee to the school committee at a future meeting, no less than 60 days out. I mean, no more than 60 days out.
As soon as
That's correct.
yes.
As soon as practical.
Karen, I'd be happy to second that motion.
Would you?
I would be happy.
And then it will look at a long-range plan.
Are there any questions with regard to Ms. Backus's motion?
No.
Mr. Nato?
Yes. I'd like to propose an amendment. Seeing there's three of us that voted for the action that in December, I feel that I should also be included in this subcommittee.
I don't know, the concern that I have about that is that that elevates it to a actual school committee meeting because that's a quorum of the school committee. So it will, you can't even participate, you can sit and watch. So perhaps if Mrs. Ahern doesn't want to participate, Mrs. Nato will want to participate in her place. But it's just not, it's not a subcommittee if you have 3 members of the school committee on it.
We need more members.
No. It's not, more members won't solve the problem. The problem is having 3 members of the school committee.
No, we need more members of the school committee because we're so small.
Oh, dear Lord.
There was a suggestion as how to get around this. I think it's a fair.
Okay,
I'll withdraw my amendment because I will take part.
thank you, Ms. Mayo.
Can I have a reading of the actual, can we have this right back for what it is?
Sure, Betsy?
No, he went through. Well, the last one.
At this time, Karen withdrew the former motion she put forth, and the motion to amend. The new motion to go forward, table a long-term plan provided by the plan provided by the long-term planning committee and for the school committee to create a subcommittee to develop an RFP for consideration to be hired through bidding process, scope determined by the subcommittee at a future meeting as soon as practical.
I think there was something missing that though, because I think it was the subcommittee will recommend the scope of work to the school committee at the, as soon as, at a future school committee meeting as soon as practicable or something along that line.
Ms. Baggs' motion as read, I would second. Is there any further questions? There being none, I call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. As per our conversation, item 13, my motion regarding long-term planning consultant is also withdrawn. Next item, FY